So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. My name is Alvin Taveras. I am the president, the founder, and CEO broker of Build-to-Rent. I've been in the real estate business for over 18 years. My background originally was in doing rehab properties with my father, did a few on my own. My wife and I gained financial independence by going 100% debt-free, paying off our student loans, paying off our colleges, paying off our cars, paying off our house. So it allows us to have a very high savings rate and focus a lot of energy on real estate. And now I can actually say that we're 100% financially free. And I actually got into real estate just by helping out other investors. I was already investing. I was already becoming known in my area for being a real estate investor. And people just kept reaching out for help. Originally, I helped them a lot when it came to rehabbing properties. And then, a few of my investors that bought volume from me, they were the ones reaching out to me, asking to do new construction. And it became abundantly clear that new construction was a way better path than it came to the rehabs, the insurance costs, higher rental rates, all of that combined. And slowly but surely, the build-to-rent business kind of grew just by taking care of my investors. And along the way, I got a chance to meet our co-host today, Jim Sheils, who actually has a similar background. And one of the things that, we can have a very detailed conversation about, ROI, cash flow, population growth. We can go into the weeds with regards to the numbers, and we probably will on a second webinar. But a lot of times I like focusing in on the why, the big picture, the purpose. We're all doing this. We're all kind of making this effort to get better returns, to become wealthier, to leave a legacy. But ultimately, the question was, why are we putting all this effort into this? And so Jim is someone that has a extraordinary life through real estate investing, and he is probably the best person to qualify to talk about the subject matter. Not only is he the best-selling author of The Family Boardroom, which is a phenomenal book, great read, great to read with you and your spouse to plan out your life. It's a great book to share with your family, to let them in on your growth journey in your real estate investing. And then, so this is a very big picture as to why. And then he recently came out with the book, which is a Passive Income Playbook. And this is basically, now we're starting to strategize. Now we're starting to work out the strategy of how to accomplish and become wealthy overall. So without further ado, I am proud to bring on a now two-time best-selling author, Jim Sheils. Round of applause.
Appreciate it. Good to be here, Alvin. Looking forward to the conversation today. I do have some slides that I know that you and I plan to go through. If you want me to pull those up, I will. But today, as you said, is a conversation with you and I and the audience. Any questions, and just going into the why, and also not only our personal whys, but also why build to rent. What took us there. I know you already alluded to some of that, but I think we can probably go a little deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, let's start by just going into your background and kind of how you found your way into this space, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the slides.
Sure. Well, I went into real estate about 25 years ago. I really wanted to do something on my own, had that entrepreneurial bug, and didn't come from money, but wanted to have financial freedom. That was a huge goal of mine. And I kept coming back to real estate. And I found a quote that said 7 out of 10 millionaires made their money in real estate. And now it's actually gone up by different stats to 8 out of 10 millionaires made their money in real estate. And I like that. I like the tangibility. Like you, I grew up in North Jersey, and I wasn't attracted to the stocks and bonds. It just didn't make that much sense to me. I like tangibility of real estate. I did the rehabs. And that was my journey, starting with that first 3-family home almost 25 years ago now. And went through the ranks of fixing up old foreclosures, did that in bulk. And then about 10 years ago is really when I hit my stride. I mean, the last 10 years of my journey has really been the fulfillment of what I always went into real estate for. And the backbone of all of that was switching from fixing up old houses to build to rent.
Awesome. Jim, you are the host. And while you go ahead and start putting your slides together, I do want to make it clear that if you are interested in receiving a free copy of the now best-selling book, Passive Income Playbook, definitely leave. Well, we have everyone's email. We're going to be sending you an email directly we just need the address where we can ship the books to. So we'll be able to put that together. And also, we want to make this webinar as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, I have the chat box open. Be more than happy to read off your questions and have Jim and I answer it in real time. Guys, the goal of this is to be interactive, be informative, and obviously, provide as many answers to the questions that you have as possible.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you again. And some of you are probably familiar faces out there. I can't see them right now, but we've worked with Alvin for a long time, and I'm a partner at Southern Impression Homes. And it really came to inception about 10 years ago as an experiment that said, could we build new construction properties and have less headaches and better results than finding these old fixer-uppers? That's really as organic as it began. And our wife and I put our 25-year journey into this book, The Passive Income Playbook. How did we discover build to rent? What did we start out in? How did we find methods to have less headaches, less turnover, less maintenance and repairs? And that all came through build to rent. And again, for Alvin and I, it's really not about the property. It's about what the property provides. And for me, sorry, the slide. For me, it's been about adventure. I wanted to have an adventure with my family and be able to give to the causes I care about, whether they're orphanages in Guatemala, building houses in third world countries. And then also, it's really my real estate that funded a family book. What's a real estate investor doing writing a family book? And a publisher got a hold of it and it went to #1 on the Wall Street Journal. And I'd like to think it's not the writing. I'm not that good of a writer, I don't think, but it's the message. And a lot of it was about, how do we make sure we make the most of the time we have with our families? And I do think real estate investing can be a great way to do it if you do it right. It can provide not only buying back your time, but also the financial resource. One of the best things I ever did is I was the only one in my family who had the financial resource and space to recover to donate a kidney to my father. My dad did not come from money. My parents never had money. My dad always had this dream of retiring early and going to the Caribbean and taking us there. And it never happened. There was a card on my parents' dresser for years. It never happened until I retired them about 15 years ago. He passed away 2 years ago. The reason I tell you this story is because he was a major motivation to be able to, when I talk about a legendary family life, I wanted to do all the things that we couldn't as a kid and kind of fulfill all the things my dad didn't get to do in his lifetime. That's kind of my goal. And my real estate's really making that happen through the adventures, the causes I care about. And Southern Impressions has been that inception. Again, I started out as me and Alvin, very similar. Like, let's find an old house, fix it up, and sell it or rent it. And we found that there was a better way. And the better way we found, and a lot of you have probably worked with us, is new construction. And that's not only single family homes, but also duplex and quad. So our sweet spot, Alvin, as you know, is the residential realm. Right now, and we'll go into getting financing, the demand. It's just a solid support of the market right now, especially here in Florida. I don't know if you have anything.
Jim, I want to focus in on just the product type a little bit.
Sure.
So can you walk us through the difference between a residential loan and a commercial loan, and just, why, as long as you can, you want to buy as many residential properties as possible?
Yeah, there are two different worlds. When people talk about real estate investing, there is residential and there's commercial. And I have a lot of friends. I've done apartments before. Apartments and other commercial buildings have a different type of financing. Normally, you cannot lock in for 30 years. You cannot amortize over 30 years. You're looking more at like 20 years. And right now, the rates are very, very difficult. They've jumped. The banks are requiring more down. And it's a very tough part of the market right now. The residential has had a little more insulation where, yeah, rates have jumped, but a couple of things can happen is you're able to get a 30-year amortization. You're able to get longer fixed loans. You're not talking, 3 years or 5 years. You're talking 10 or more. And the rates, especially, which we'll talk about, our in-house financing, where we're able to pre-buy mortgages in the residential realm. You can still get locked in at what rates were 2-3 years ago. Most people think we're lying until they actually do a deal with us, and Alvin has laughed about that before. But we're currently, through residential, able to lock people into 4.75%, and that's happening right now.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. So Alvin, I know you and I have looked at this, but why do you and I believe in real estate? Well, and especially build to rent. 5 years ago, if you had invested $250,000 into the S&P 500, you would have did about 10.5%. That's good. Into a real estate fund, which I invest in both of these, but a real estate fund, 13.5%. That's a good return. However, when you look at the overall, if you had invested $250,000 5 years ago into our build to rent program here in our core market of Jacksonville, Florida, which Alvin's had lots of clients that have, you would have earned over 69% on your money year over year for the last 5 years. That's the power of buy and hold real estate. And one thing that I've learned is, why do I like buy and hold real estate? Because of this. I mean, look at this chart. This is the Fed. And I don't know if my picture's in the way. Let me move myself out of the way. This keeps going up and up and up. Are there times where it's had down? Absolutely. But there has never been an 8 to 10 year period in real estate ever where it's been bad to hold properties, especially if you get the right type and in the right area. And I believe this trend is going to continue of real estate going up. It'll have some ups and downs, but overall, when you're looking long-term as a long-term buy and hold, you're looking at growth. You're looking at higher rents. You're looking at higher values.
Yeah, Jim, and one of the things I want to highlight here is when you buy the S&P 500 or really any stock, you're really buying something with the option of eventually selling it, right? That's it. You
Yeah.
can't control the asset. You're not taking a loan on that asset, right? You can't go to Chase Bank and borrow money from the bank to buy Chase stock, right?
No.
But they will lend you money to buy a property. Same is
Yes.
true when you do real estate. I'm not only buying it now and eventually being able to sell it in the future, I also sell it monthly. Every month I'm selling it, right?
Yeah.
So it's I'm getting a check, where versus if I buy gold index funds or any treasury, I'm not getting that same kind of monthly return in that same way. And then
Yeah.
again, the one thing that isn't captured here is the debt pay down. The fact that someone else is paying down the mortgage. So I always have the joke, and everyone who's heard me talk about this, heard me say this every single time. Every property you buy is 75% off. All you have to do is wait 30 years, because you're
Hmm.
only putting 25% down into the property and the tenant's paying down the rest. So even, and we know obviously because of the price, the cost of labor and material costs, we will have appreciation, no doubt about it, especially in a hot market like Florida that's receiving over 1,000 people per day. But even if the property doesn't go up in value, 30 years from now, you're going to have a huge windfall because you only put 25% in, and now you have a fully paid off property. So,
Yes.
so when we look at these type of charts, we're just looking at the value going up. But in real estate, we get so much other ways of building wealth that isn't captured any other way.
Absolutely. And I'll go over some principles about, there's actually 5 different ways we make money in real estate. And as you said, with the stocks, if I buy $500,000 worth of stock, I normally need $500,000. If I buy $500,000 worth of real estate, I need 100,000. That's quite a nice change. And again, I like to follow what big guys do. Blackstone obviously has a lot of money, obviously has big departments analyzing deals, trends. Chris, my partner, and I did a lot of deals with Tricon years back. Well, they just bought Tricon for $3.5 billion, and Tricon is built up. Their entire worth, for the most part, is in properties like Alvin and I are talking about. That tells me if Blackstone still sees an upside, I like to follow as that smaller fish to people who have big departments that are analyzing deals, and also invest my money in my own way where I have control. And again, this is why Blackstone comes to us to say, invest in our REIT, which is backed by the real estate that we're able to directly buy, and we do with Alvin. So that's pretty exciting to me. There's 3 types of investors. There's the effective one. That's the base level Alvin and I just talked about, where we started out in our own backyard, finding realtors, finding fixer-uppers, finding contractors, handymen, doing all that, finding our own tenants. It could be a great way to get started, as long as you have the time and you like to get in the trenches and that's what you want. Then there's the more enhanced level, and that's where we hit on, some people want to just invest in a REIT or a real estate fund. And that's good because you have really little to absolutely no involvement, and you can get a good interest return, and you're comfortable with just that interest return, but you're not looking long-term, like Alvin said, about debt pay down or appreciation. But again, you are exposed to real estate. And then the engage level. The engage level are people that want to be actively owning real estate, but they don't want to be doing all the work that Alvin and I did all those years ago, finding tenants and finding contractors and figuring out the right deals and surveying which areas are going to have the growth and projections. So they lean on someone else to do that and bring in all the answers from which property, how to get it financed, how to get it managed, where's the insurance coming from. And that's the level we like to stick at, because the guardrails that we try to put on is we like to build people properties and they shouldn't have to work more than 2 to 3 hours a month just to oversee them.
Yeah, and just to go back in that one slide, one of the
Sure.
things compared to a REIT or any other type of investment is that you have ownership of the property. So if you found that, adding a fence would be a great benefit, if you thought 3 or 4 years down the road you wanted to do a short-term rental, or you wanted to exit the property and maybe 1031 something bigger, you have full control over that. So
Yes.
oftentimes when you're looking at a REIT, you're really trusting that a manager is going to hire the right manager, and that manager is going to have another manager, and all are going to get their cut, and eventually you'll get some dividends at the end of that. But you're in no control of the asset. So if the management company wants to now save up money and to have more in reserves and not pay out of dividends, they have the right to do so. If they were supposed to exit after 5 years and they want to extend to maybe add on 2 or 3 more years before an exit, you don't have any control of it. So the type of engaged investor is a type that you are working with a partner to help you identify and manage the right property, but you have the right ownership. And now when you want to do a 1031 exchange, you want to do a cash out refi, or you want to sell the property, you are now in full control and you can make a decision 100% on your own. And that's something that you can't do with an index fund or buying into a REIT.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. And how do you get started? Again, it's not for real estate investing to get started and to build the portfolio. And we've worked with about 1,000 clients now. You're only looking at about 80,000 to get started. Right now, we have almost $1 billion under asset management for build to rent here in Florida. We're producing 56 million in annual recurring revenue for our investors. That's produced almost 200 million now in equity for our investors. We have over 950 investors, and that's growing. A large number of those we work in tandem with Build to Rent and Alvin. And then 9,000 units developed. We've got about 10,000 tenants, and that's actually a low estimate. We have over 120 people on our direct team helping to make things happen with Build to Rent and your assets. And currently, we have over 5,000 lots in Florida, where a lot of people are struggling to find land. We really loaded up on land in the beginning of 2020. So we're in a good position. We plan to build all these out because the demand is there, and we have the systems in place. We figure right now, between all of the family education and building that we've done right now, it's impacting 375,000 families. My partner Chris and I, we want to get that to 1 million. One thing that's also very good is we were acquired, a piece of our company was acquired a year and a half ago by Sumitomo Forestry. And if you look them up, you'll see they are the big company of Japan. They were a conglomerate broken up in World War II. Warren Buffett invests with them. They're 331 years old. They look at things for the long term, and they wanted to be involved in Build to Rent, and they wanted to be involved in Florida. So it is a very good partnership we've formed. We are one of few builders with zero bank debt. We have no bank debt. That is a comfort I know Alvin just smiled there, because you want to always make sure your builder is solvent, which makes us very solvent. And it gives us a lot of access. They build 17,000 homes worldwide annually. So we plugged into a big network now. What does that do? Well, that's better deals and pricing and quality for our clients, better service overall, because we don't have to focus on finding money or working with banks. We are all self-funded on our build projects, and that gives a better future because we can focus really on the client and the building projects themselves, which
Yeah,
we're very
Jim, I do want to harp on that last bit. I know you like to go fast paced,
sorry. No, I want to
no,
keep things
but
moving. My bad.
that point is such a huge point, that you guys are basically building out of pocket cash. So while all other builders are having to go to the market and get their 10, 12, 14% construction loans to fund these dues, you've already owned the land, and you own the land for several years now. So your cost from the land part is lower. your cost to construct is also lower because you're not paying the financial cost that other people are building. You're also
Exactly.
building at scale. So you're not getting one refrigerator at a time. You're doing thousands of refrigerators, thousands of truss, thousands of shingles, right? And because of the way that you're building all concentrated in the same area, you're doing a lot of properties in that same geographical area, which again allows you to do more scale ability and have a lower cost per product that you build. So I know we're going to dive into some of the incentives in a little bit, but I think this is a very important way to show that we're offering these incentives because you're looking at your margins, and we want to make sure we can put a product together that's exciting for the investor, and you have enough margin in the deal for yourself as a builder to offer some of these things. There are some builders that had to stop building because their construction costs got too high, and they don't have future revenue coming in as a result of it. A
Yeah.
lot of them are asking large deposits at the very beginning of construction before they even begin. So the majority of your inventory is within 3 months of being completed, and you have a backlog of inventory keep coming as a result of it. So while other builders are having a hard time, you guys are thriving in large part because of your scale, yes, but also because you're building basically 100% cash out of pocket.
Yeah. And we're also on what's called, Alvin, a continual build cycle. So this is pretty important. A lot of builders, the banks are really tough right now. So they'll say, hey, we'll let you build a house, but we want you to get a deposit on it, and a big deposit. And from an A paper buyer, that means a really qualified buyer. And now you can start building. Well, now with the build out times and that, it could take up to a year for you to get your property. We're on a continual build because we don't have any restrictions. So that means we've done this in the last week. Alvin's looking for someone, they're wanting to move cash in, or they have a 1031 exchange. Well, they can close on a property with us in 30 days. We always have inventory that's ready and available, sometimes already rented. You're not having to decide, hey, I'd like to do a property, and then waiting 12 months. You can close in really less than 30 days on one of our new construction, because we're always on a continual build cycle with our single family homes, with our duplexes, and with our quads. Our model, as you and I have talked about offline, it's very simple. We tried to break down what did I do and simplify it. We have principles and indicators that we follow. Our most successful clients that we've helped dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times invest in 3 to 5 properties, and every 3 to 5 years they roll their equity into new deals by refinancing and letting, as you talked about before, Alvin, their tenant pays for that. They don't pay for that, and it's tax free. And then I included a part in the book of a legendary family life blueprint. Since I do a lot of family education, I said, how as real estate investors, or a part-time real estate investor, can you really enjoy your family life more? And that's part of our book. But again, we'll make sure everyone gets a copy of this book. But I think it's important for everyone to kind of know our principles. And I've talked about this on some of Alvin's podcasts before and shows, but I know we really see eye to eye on this. First of all, with build to rent principles, we invest for the long term. If you're looking to flip a house in 6 months, that's fine, but we're probably not for you. We build portfolios for the long term. A lot of people talk about generational wealth. I believe if you want to have generational wealth and pass properties down, you better have some good quality properties in good areas. And that's what our build to rent model really looks for, is investing for the long term.
Right. And so a lot of those fix and flips, it's really you're signing up for a job, right? It's a part-time job or full-time job that you're doing. And so most of our types of investors, they're not looking for another job. They want to make a really smart investment once and let it go to work to them. The real wealth from real estate comes from the long run. It comes from holding onto the property. And one of the best things about buying a new construction property is you're not going to have any major expenses due for the first 10 to 15 years. The roof isn't due, the water heater isn't due, all your appliances are going to be good for 10 years. So all of your major expenses are not around the corner, right? Versus if you buy and hold a flip property or rehab property, every year something is due. And so imagine you change the water heater and that costs you $2,000, and you were only projected to make $2,000 from profit from that property. Well, there goes your cash flow for the entire year. And so if another year you have another problem, you're not even making profit on that property, which is why we like to write it out for the first 10 to 15 years before any major expenses are due. And then you want to do a 1031 or cash out refi into something else, right? But you want to keep that ball going, but the real wealth happens over the long run. Jim, we do have a question for
Sure.
anonymous attendee. Thank you for not disclosing who you are. Uh, and this is probably ties directly into probably your point number two is what advice do you have for a first-time investor?
My advice, and this is something you want to read in the book, and I've talked with Alvin on some of his past shows if you want to go back and listen. If I could go back 25 years, I would own less of better quality. Own less of better quality. I was in just an incredible race of the 100 House Club, and I hit that times two, but the quality wasn't there, and that is the major concern. So that's why Alvin and I both like build to rent. I will own less properties that get better results. Right now, I probably from my peak have almost 80% less properties, but I have more cash flow and more equity than I've ever had in my life. That should tell you something. So I would say as a first-time investor, focus on quality more than quantity. Own less of better quality. That's the key. And we'll go over that in some of the principles in a minute. We already kind of hit on this, Alvin. Real estate makes money in five different ways. Cash flow is important. This is one. But where Alvin and I think, started our career, we got so fixated on cash flow with older fixer-upper properties in tougher areas. And what I found is I was giving back my cash flow and then some with the turnover, with the maintenance that was unexpected. And instead of feeling better in a few years, I was feeling more drained. And had I just gone into a higher caliber property with a little more less cash flow to start, well, in 3 to 4 years, I would have felt pretty relaxed, like the wind's at my back and not like throwing up the white flag. So I always say to people, cash flow is important, but there's 5 different ways you're making money on these deals, like the debt down, the depreciation, go ahead, Alvin, I'm sorry.
No. You're nailing it on the head. And a lot of people, and this is worth saying, 'cause a lot of our investors, when they decide they want to become an out-of-state investor, really the entire country opens up to them. So I often get questions about people who are considering markets like Memphis, Indiana, or central Pennsylvania, and they're trying to hit this magical 1% rule. And so if you're trying to buy a property for $100,000, trying to get $1,000 in rent, I can guarantee you that that property has not appreciated in a very long time, right? It's not going to have appreciation. You're probably going to run into a lot of high expenditures, which on paper you might have a good cash flow, but again, once you start answering the phone calls and doing some of those repair requests, that's going to eat in, and that doesn't show up on your paper. Additionally, when you eventually want to sell that property, people in those budget oriented markets, they're going to work you down. They're going to grind on you to get a better price point. So you're not going to be able to fix it up and then have it have a much higher appreciation value, because that's a bargain market for a reason. And it's very difficult to time when you're going to gentrify a region. There are a lot of markets throughout Florida that people have been talking about for years. It's going to be gentrified and then go up in value, and it just hasn't happened. Instead, we like to focus on markets that the growth is obvious, the appreciation is obvious. You're going to get a higher quality tenant. This should not be a job. I have properties nearby. I don't even want to go see them. I don't even want to know if I get that check every single month, I'm happy. And that gives me the peace of mind, which maybe would be the sixth wealth creation, is just peace of mind, right? And that's the ultimate sign of wealth, is when you have a clarity of your thoughts. So yeah, these 5 are absolutely important. But again, picking the right region, picking the right property is what gives you these 5 benefits. They're not universally found.
Yeah, and that ties right into invest in good areas and good neighborhoods. Own less of better quality. Again, we're about buying back our time, not creating a second or third job with real estate investing for our clients. And what I found is when we started to go into good areas, good neighborhoods, and new construction, our vacancy time, our occupancy time went from an average of a little over a year to a little over 3 years. And I can't tell you how important that is when all of a sudden you have tenants staying on more of an average of 3 years compared to 1, with turnover costs, with vacancy downtime. That's a really important thing. And we found in good areas and good neighborhoods, we get that. And also we were getting better rent growth more systematically, and also better value growth. And that's something again of you're saying, gosh, you're burning your ships on what really did it for you and Alvin, and we are. I avoid fixer-uppers now. I only go new construction because I don't want to have surprises for me or my clients. You know, we all seen the Tom Hanks and Shelley Long movie, The Money Pit. And sometimes for part-time investors, they don't see what they're getting into. And we've seen the difference in the new construction model. As Alvin said, the longer warranties, the longer you can look out for bigger repairs, the less turnover, less maintenance and repair, less surprises. You know, on a 1950s house, I owned hundreds of these. I can't tell you how many times I got the call and the wood was rotted under the roof that was on there, or the sewer main went, or there's just all of these things you can't see with the fixer-uppers. So now we avoid fixer-uppers, which kind of go against the TV shows, but I don't think I have to tell you guys, sometimes the TV shows lie to us. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Alvin.
Oh, so I was gonna say something about the last point and just the really good neighborhoods is you'll find that a lot of the areas that we select are actually areas that are not in the core of the city. They're actually a little bit further away. And so a lot of times what we find areas that have a high owner occupancy rate is going to have more pride of ownership. Um, your neighbors are going to be homeowners. They're going to own their lot. They're going to better take care of them. Generally speaking, the school district is going to be a little bit better. And your tenants are going to be oftentimes family with school aged children. And families with school aged children tend to be very sticky tenants because they're not looking to move their kids out of a different school, in the middle of the school year. So also a lot of our properties have room for them to grow. They have a backyard. A lot of them have a garage. They have an extra bonus room sometimes. So as the family grows, the house is already big enough for them versus sometimes if you're looking at an apartment building and you have a 2-2 and there's a 4-story walk up, it's like once you have a child, there's no more room, right? you're forced to now have to move. Or when you focus in on the core of a city, that it tends to be a lot more transient. People are coming and going a lot quicker. So a lot of
Yeah.
the good neighborhoods tend to be more suburban, more owner occupied, and tenants tend to be a lot stickier as a result.
Yes. And we do what's called scattered lots. Again,
Yep.
you've been through tons of our neighborhoods, Alvin. We go into neighborhoods where there's vacant lots. It's already an established neighborhood. There's already a high percentage of owner occupied people living there, and we buy up the lots. Or sometimes we do build whole developments. Let's say like the biggest one we ever did was 1,000 lots in Jacksonville. And you'd go, gosh, that's a lot of rental properties to have all together. And we agree. So what we actually did was we only kept 150 of the lots for our build to rent program. The other 850 we sold to national home builders. So national home builders built nice owner occupied properties around, and we got to put our single family homes and in some of our other areas duplexes. And so we kind of keep that ratio of homeowner to renter really healthy, even in our new construction model. The only neighborhoods that we build that are all investor owned are our small quad communities, but we do HOAs for all of those to keep up the integrity of them. So yeah, that's a really important point, Alvin. And with these properties, I let experts manage my properties. Property management pays the least and is some of the worst part of the game, I believe. Now you can down the effort by going into what I just said, avoiding fixer-uppers and avoiding worse neighborhoods. Again, we stick right to that median. And so, but I've never enjoyed managing my properties. I still don't today. I sub it out. And I find if your goal is really to buy back your time and to get to the things you care about, like I was showing, adventures with your family, causes you care about, hobbies that you've had to, leave behind because you've been so busy, then I encourage you to let experts manage your property.
Yeah, Jim, I'm a licensed broker. I don't manage my own properties. I don't want to. The way I look at it is I think as far as like, what's my clarity of thought? What am I focused at? What am I best at? So my core competency is not managing properties. I don't have an interest in it. And I look at it like if I don't want to do it 25 times, right? If I get 25 units, would I want to manage that portfolio? The answer is no. So why would I do one? Right? Because the skills you need to be great at one of them is the same that you need to be skilled at 25 of them. I don't want to be a skilled property manager. I would rather outsource that to someone who's better at it than I am, has better tools than I do, and is going to ultimately enjoy that. That's someone else's core competency. That's not mine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why obviously we provide management. because when my partner and I kind of designed this program, we said, we know most people like us won't want to manage their own properties. So we got to build a company to make sure it happens. Rental properties are for cash flow, guys, not for charity. Now, honestly, they're for 5 different reasons, like I said, but I like to remind this one because when I bought my first 5 properties in Bakersfield, California, almost 25 years ago, I was collecting more stories than I was rent. And I got really clear, Alvin, and everyone listening, that I could not combine my rental properties with charity anymore. Because if I did, I'd never be able to give charity anywhere else. So, and that's another reason I like to let experts manage it. But you as a landlord, your mortgage will be due at the end of every month, and you have to kind of hold a firm ground. Sometimes people are in a situation, and we've been able to help, but most of the times I've had the different situation. So I really always try to keep my charity and my rental properties completely separate.
And that's a good point. When you have a property management team, they're going to go by what's written on the contract, right? They have a set guidelines of what to do and what example. And so if the tenant's reaching out for whatever reason, asking for whatever favor, they're going to follow the guidelines because they're not going to do something for one tenant and not do it for the other. That's called discrimination. So, if you were managing your own property, that tenant may persuade you to do something that you wouldn't do to somebody else. And you want to avoid any type of scenarios like that. The property management company will run it very black and white, very unemotional, very just to the book. Everyone signed an agreement. The property management company is going to make sure that everyone's following that agreement. And that's the key benefit.
Absolutely. This is one that is very important to Alvin and I, and our home addresses tell you exactly that. You got to invest in landlord-friendly states. There has been more changes in the last 5 years in landlord laws than I've seen in the last 25, and not all of those have been friendly. In fact, some states have gotten just completely and totally unfriendly with landlords. And you got to be able to collect rents. And I've had friends in upstate New York, in California, that they couldn't collect rents through the pandemic for 14, 15 months. That is devastating, especially when you own, it actually gets worse when you own a good sized portfolio, which they did. So I know myself and Alvin, we like landlord friendly states. There's a few of them out there that really stick out. I'd say Florida probably is the number one. I'm sure a lot of you saw that squatters law that just passed out, that squatters don't have rights in Florida. And you don't have to totally agree with that. But it's good as a landlord that someone can't just take over your property. So we like to focus on landlord-friendly states. That's why we've gone into 12 different markets in Florida.
Yeah, and a big part of it is thinking about the way that we're perceived by the state as an investor. And so oftentimes states view investors as being a big, greedy conglomerate. What they forget is that the majority of investors are actually mom and pop investors, or people that have a few or a couple, and they're really using that in substitute of a retirement account, of a college savings plan. A lot of us are actually using this to build our own personal wealth, and we are part of the solution. So we all know affordability is a huge problem, is a huge concern for the population as a whole. We need more inventory. So as an investor, we're actually part of solving that affordability problem for a lot of our future tenants, where they can't afford to buy a house themselves. Rent is extremely expensive. And if you look at the average medium rental rate that we're going for, we're not chasing 2,600, 2,800. We're actually trying to solve the affordability problem by building affordable, I shouldn't say affordable housing, that has probably a lower standard stigma to it. We're building quality homes that are at an affordable rent where most of the market is. So we actually are creating products for where most tenants are already looking for. And that allows us to, I guess, feel that we're making a very positive contribution to society. And I mean, investors are needed. People can't live on a vacant lot. There's no benefit there. They can live in a built-up house that now it works for tenants. And so I think Florida sees us as being part of that solution. And they want to encourage more of this kind of development, as to the point that you mentioned, as far as not allowing squatters, making sure that we are evicting tenants, that we are following the agreements. And there's several others, including taxes and others. I'm sure we're going to mention them, but we're not going to be in states where it's hostile to investors. That's not a win-win, and we're not trying to enter those type of markets.
Absolutely, absolutely. And workforce housing is needed. Uh, State governments recognize that like landlords, and they support that. And they also know new construction done right is going to provide some really solid, affordable inventory that if we didn't build, that people wouldn't be able to get. So we are completely aligned on that. And we plug into a support team to get all this done. I can't stress that enough. What we do with Alvin and the teams that we've built around it is so you don't have to redo it all. And so we encourage people, if you're going to plug into a support team, plug in. That's how I started. I bought a few of my properties through a support team when I was still living in California here. And I said, gosh, this works well. Where it doesn't work, if you want to recreate the wheel, do it on your own. Honestly, Alvin and I probably aren't for you. We've tried to design the system because we've had to answer the questions 1,000 times. We've had to go through the scenarios so many times. And so plugging in is going to give you what you want without a lot of the headaches and the unknown. So if you're going to go in with a group like this, definitely plug in. Don't try to recreate the wheel, because it just puts a lot of stress on yourself that's not needed. And I
Yeah.
encourage, and I know, go ahead. Did you have a comment
Oh
on
yeah,
that?
if you can go back to four. One of the things that separates us at Built to Rent is that we're actually boots on the ground. So we have licensed real estate agents. We call them district managers throughout the state of Florida. We actually attend the inspections. We're there for the final walkthrough. We have a physical presence. We know the markets because we live in the markets. So we have district managers throughout Jacksonville, South Florida, Tampa, Orlando, Southwest Florida. We are throughout Florida. And so we have that boost in the ground presence that, can speak to you the differences between the multiple addresses, speak to you about the details of each of the markets we're in. But as you mentioned, we have those builders already building inventory, already ramping up. We have the preferred lenders already intact with preferred interest rates. We have the preferred property management team who already knows the property, who already has photos for the listing. We're not, waiting to a month to gain access to the property. Oftentimes, we have properties with tenants already in place before we even sell the property. So we also have preferred insurance companies. Obviously, you can shop that out, but it's very difficult to beat our preferred insurance provider on their policy rates. Preferred title company. We are truly a plug and play solution. We cover it across the board, and we all do volume together. So you're working with a team that has a lot of success together, and has guided now thousands of clients to do the same thing that you're looking to do.
Yeah, exactly. And Alvin and I have talked about this. Build to rent builders are very niche. And that's what Alvin has done when he started his partnership with us years ago. He vetted us very heavily, because there's a lot of people that claim to do what we do, or are interested in what we do, but not quite committed. So I always say, only work with a builder, which now Alvin has been able to do all the legwork for you, a builder that has a track record. That only makes sense to me. And a track record honestly starts at about 500 properties. If they've built at least 500 build to rent properties, they've gone through a certain learning phase where I think they really hit stride. We're up close to 3,000 now, and I still think we're fine tuning. But those first 500 really define what you're doing, and help you hit your stride.
And I want to just highlight one of the benefits of the project that we have is, as an example, when we do an inspection on the property, we'll put together everything identified on that inspection report, including our own walkthrough. We provide everything over to the builder. And you guys have done a phenomenal team of making sure that everything on that inspection list gets addressed, right? If you were to get a deal, even a new construction on the MLS, you're still negotiating for certain repairs to be done. So even though you're buying a new construction property, you're still negotiating for the new home builder to do some of these repairs. And they may choose to or not to do it, because technically that's an as-is contract and they don't have to do anything as long as the property has CO. So, but that track record goes through obviously going on the contract and ultimately through closing and making sure the property is 100% ready for tenants to move in.
Absolutely. Last is never stop learning. Again, I've been in this 25 years. I am always reading. I am always listening to webinars. I am always listening to podcasts. I never stop learning. And my learning is niched down now to this industry in particular. I want to know what's happening with build to rent, with the best construction techniques, where are the growth patterns going, what are rental demands looking at in different markets, what are the best ways to be able to serve clients. This is a big thing. And also my own personal development, my health, my relationships. I'm a learner, and I think that's a really important thing for what I've seen of our most successful clients. They're not like, yeah, I started learning this stuff 10 years ago and got enough and stopped 5 years ago. They're just constantly learning. Super important quality
Yeah,
for me.
I do want to remind everybody that we do have the questions chat room open. If you guys want to ask any questions, feel free to do so. I want to open that up. I see a hands up from Jose, hands up from Susan. Please type in your questions in the chat box, and I'll make sure we get Jim to answer them.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this, Alvin. My children, I have 5 children ranging from 2 to 20, are very involved in our real estate, especially the 2 oldest. They attend accounting meetings with us. They go to our properties with us. I believe that if you really want to get support and camaraderie and buy-in, make sure your family's a part of this. Explain to them what you're doing, that you're building a rental portfolio. Have them learn with you. It's never too young. You know, my 20-year-old is now about to buy his first property and money he saved. So he's beaten me by 5 years. I bought my first one at 25. I'm thrilled that he's crushing the age gap and buying sooner. But get your kids involved. That's where you're going to see buy-in. And if you really have the goal, like Alvin and I, to pass down generational wealth through these rentals, well, you might as well start learning, teach them about it now. These we could go through real quick, Alvin, because I know, you know, with all the great dialogue and brainstorming back and forth, I don't want to keep everyone too long. I've just learned there are 5 predictable passive income success indicators. This has been undeniable through real estate, and you and I have talked of these before. These 5 things drive a real estate market. They just do. Is there economic growth? Is there population growth? Is there affordability? This is one that's so key that kicks so many people out the door for cash flow and for growth. You know, we are still affordable here in Florida, which means we can still cash flow even new construction properties. Desirability, is there something drawing people to these areas that they want to live, or they like the lifestyle? They want to be, I always said, warm and by the water is important to people. And then supply and demand. You know, down where Alvin lives, I remember the municipality released a report to us before the pandemic even started that they were 3 years behind on needed rental units at that time. And then all of a sudden the pandemic happened, and I'm sure a lot of you know, Alvin's main area was the fastest growing area in the United States in 2021. That says a lot. So we want to go as builders where there's a lot of demand and an undersupply. That's why we really stocked up on those 5,000 lots. And these 5 cannot, I don't depend on appreciation, but I do my best to get in its way. And these really can help indicate that. Florida has all these. One thing that, you know, I've gotten clear on is population. Oh, let me go back on that. Oh, well, let's look at, sorry guys, these slides get a little sticky. So this says it all. Southeast is the fastest growing area in the United States. We formed over 12 million households between 2012 and 2021, but only 7 million homes were built. That's an easy math equation you want to keep in your head when you're talking about, is this really needed for build to rent? Also, remember what I want to talk on, I really am big on affordability. We right now have a lot of investors come out of like Salt Lake, Utah. Why? Well, Salt Lake City, if you look at this, the median value is almost 600,000. The average household income is the exact same as Cape Coral, right near Alvin, and the average rents are very similar. Yet, our median home value right now is almost $250,000 less. And I always say to people, which market do you still has room for growth? Another one, I know Alvin's team's done a lot up here in our Jacksonville market with our quads and other properties. Boise, Idaho. We all of a sudden last year had a lot of people coming from Boise. I'm going, why are you coming out of Boise? Well, again, they're almost at 550,000 median, very similar household incomes. We're $250,000 less in Jacksonville, under 300,000, where they're closing up on 600,000. Those are important numbers. And again, like Alvin said before, we're in outskirts areas and not in the most popular areas. You don't see us building in Tampa. We're not really building in Miami. We're not building in Orlando. Those are great markets, but our job is to uncover where we think the growth is going to go. The affordability index is still healthy, and there's that great demand and desirability. So these are a lot of the markets that we focus on. And I believe Alvin's team has invested in all of these markets with us: Jacksonville,
Yep.
Palm Coast, Ocala, Citrus Springs, Inverness, Fort Myers, Englewood, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Lehigh Acres, and Cape Coral. All of those markets have the fundamentals, those 5 factors we look for.
Absolutely. We like areas where the land is cheap and the rents are high and the growth is obvious.
Absolutely, absolutely. And supply and demand. This is really interesting. Since 2008, the meltdown, which was not a fun time for real estate investors, there's become a shortage. 14,000 square feet or smaller, it's less than 10% of all new builds right now. Think about that. That affordable workforce housing Alvin said was in such need. Well, the builders aren't building it because, again, we are well known as a low margin builder, and most of the big nationals want to be high margin builders. That's why they're the big guys. We'll stay at that lower level and do low margin, but we're providing a need in the market where less than 10% of all the builds are fulfilling this 1,400 square feet and under. And we have that for our single families, for our duplex units, and for our quad units. And then hurricanes. I want to talk about this one real quick, Alvin, if we can. This is a picture of Punta Gorda, Florida, right near Alvin. You see, this is the day after Hurricane Ian. Now, in the bottom right, there's one roof that had some blow off right there. But if you look at the rest of this, look at the rest of this for a minute. Okay, it's a category 4. It came through. Everything's looking pretty good. I mean, there's some standing water, there's some palm fronds down, there's some pieces of fence, but all the properties are intact. Why? The eye of the storm went right over this. Well, this area was decimated in 2004 by a Hurricane Charlie. And at that time, the government stepped in and said, time out. We're changing the rules. You got to build on higher ground. You have to build to new construction standards with stronger fasteners, stronger structural integrity. And as you can see, it worked, because this is after a category 4 the next day went right through it. We've seen the same thing with our new construction model. We build on higher ground. So the old properties that you hear about flooding, they were built at 2 feet above sea level. We're at 13 feet above sea level. We're also building stronger structural designs that are required by building code now in Florida, 2004 or newer. And even though we're in a lot of coastal markets, we still build a lot of our properties 5 miles inland from the coast, which automatically gives analysts at their insurance companies a deduction on our insurance. And our new construction properties have had no problem getting insurance. Our rates have even dropped this year. And why? Because they like performance. When we had that big Hurricane Ian 2 years ago go through, 4 of our 278 projects down near Alvin had insurance claims. That means it's just over $5,000 worth of damage. Now, it's important to tell you, those 4 properties, well, we had only had time to put up the freestanding walls. And so the wind blew those walls over. We didn't have time to tie the roof on, which gives it its strength. So we had to get the walls picked up. But that's 4. We had no flooding in any of our properties, and flooding causes the most damage. So that's why, another reason I like new construction. I've seen the properties hold up well, and even the most extreme weather, and the insurance is cheaper, which helps our cash flow. Anything to add on that, Alvin? I know that you've had a lot of experience through that.
Yeah, I always joke that the questions we get most often is about alligators and about hurricanes. And so one of the things that I always want to mention is we're avoiding flood zones. We don't like flood zones either, right? And we're never gonna, we're getting out of its way. We'd rather avoid those markets anyway. And in general, for new construction home, they're being built 5 to 8 feet above the street level. They automatically have a wind mitigation discounts on the insurance as well. They're getting newer windows, newer roof, newer. It's a lot cheaper overall, and we're avoiding those high risk areas as well. A lot of the biggest damage actually occurred on the Bear Islands of Southwest Florida, which you can question whether we should even be building there. But that's where all the news coverage was. We're not building in those areas. We're avoiding them. We like higher elevated areas. And to your point, we did not have, I have several properties in the areas. I didn't file an insurance claim on any of my properties.
Yeah. Yeah. So that speaks for it. And being both Northeasterners, Alvin and I got used to the alligators pretty quick. They're honestly not that big of a life as, when we were kids, I thought quicksand and falling anvils were going to be a bigger part of my life, and even moving here in Florida. And
Well,
I think it's
we
definitely
definitely eat more of them than they eat of us.
that's for sure. Gator tail is pretty tasty. So the typical investor, and I know we might be wrapping up. I do want to get to a slide on the incentives, Alvin, but who do we work with? This is why Alvin and I formed the partnership years ago, because we want to be able to find the deal, finance the deal, and manage the deal. I mean, one of the biggest things, not only education, but is in vetting, you have to go through a lot of frogs to kiss the prince, whatever the saying is. And we're able to find each other and really combine our efforts to provide just this. We can take care of finding the deals so you don't have to worry about which areas have growth. We take care of that, build the property, bring in financing, and then bring in long-term management. So all those things, like when I talked about earlier, that effective level, when Alvin and I started, it took dozens and dozens and dozens of hours every month. You should be able to step in with guardrails of really only working about 2 hours a month is our goal on your portfolio. So I think, Alvin, I know I had some different people that I was going to do case studies on, just success stories, but we are at the top of the hour. And I can make sure that everyone gets a copy of these slides so that they can go through them at themselves. But I think at the top of the hour, I did want to make sure that I got to the incentive programs, because I do think those are very important to go through. One of the things that makes us very viable right now to investors is our in-house financing program. In-house financing is something we're always trying to solve problems. And again, I have some live deals here. Alvin's team is working with it. We work hand in hand. And Alvin is being one of our closest partners as par pricing, which means if you guys came to us personally as my cousin or my brother-in-law, they're not going to get a better price than Alvin does, because that's what we cut with our arrangement layer. So we give him the absolute bottom line pricing that we receive for any of our personal properties. So that's been a good partnership for all to work off of. Again, sorry. Oh, the in-house slide was removed. I'm sorry, Alvin. So we'll come back to that. Let me stop sharing, but let me explain that with the in-house financing. The in-house financing is a program we put together almost 2 years ago, because the interest rates started to go so quickly that cash flow started to go away. And although I don't depend on cash flows everything, I do want to have you have positive cash flow off the bat. So we actually got into the money buying business a little over a year ago, where we started to pre-buy mortgages in large chunks of money. We have a healthy balance sheet. The banks will do this with us, and we're able to pass that savings on to our investors. So Alvin's had several of people in the build to rent community buy over the last few months, and these people have been locking in with us, paying for it, a 4.75% interest rate. Now, if you go into the average mortgage company right now, you're at 7, maybe even 7.5 for a duplex or quad. We're giving the incentive program of 4.75. If you want to buy it down even more using some of your own money, you can buy it down to 4.25. And then we also offer 2 years of free property management. Now, why do we do this? Well, again, we want to do volume. We see this as a great time to be in the market. We want to get people off on the right foot, because most of our investors buy 3 to 8 properties with us to build that solid portfolio. We know if we get you off on the right foot with those solid numbers to begin with, we'll make that happen. So we like to give those incentive programs, the in-house financing in the 4% ranges, and also 2 years of free management, which I know, Alvin, you've taken advantage of a lot yourself.
Yeah. So I want to stress that a little bit. So right now, the biggest challenge of the moment is interest rates. So when you're looking to buy a close to $1 million quadplex and you get quoted 8% interest rate, it's a bad deal, right? It's really tough to make the numbers work. In fact, you can buy any property and even take, 10, 15, 20% off the purchase price. If you tack on 8% interest rate to that deal, even with that built-in equity, it's really tough to make the numbers work. And so what we've seen over the years is cap rates have been about the same. So prices went up 20%, rental rates went up 20%. That's about the same. The difference is the cost of financing went up tremendously. So that's killing your cash on cash returns. The only way to solve this, and this is how Jim and I work together, we try to package these deals together, is we say, okay, typically a seller contribution is capped at just receiving 2% of the purchase price to the investor. They're capped at 2%. And so we're saying, hey, 2% is great, but we got to be more aggressive to make these deals more exciting. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up having a preferred lender that we're using. And actually, with partnership with the builder, the lenders actually make the contribution to buy down the rates to, like Jim mentioned, 4.25% interest rate. Those interest rates now make that $1 million quadplex cash flow beautifully, great cash on cash returns. Now all the numbers open up again. We're getting the same financing that you could have otherwise received maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So while everyone else is struggling to make deals work, we're doing volume because we're solving the biggest challenge of the day, which is interest rate. Let alone you add on 2 years free property management and your cash flow really opens up and you're working with a reliable team who already knows the property. Oftentimes, there's already a tenant pool waiting for these properties. They're actively marketing the same types of units and we're typically able to get applicants into the units fairly quickly right after closing.
Yes. Some of our properties even are pre-leased. I know that, you're working with some clients that have already had pre-leased properties, Alvin. So again, working through Alvin, he is great at putting together portfolios and his team is, and some of them could even be pre-leased. We don't promise that, but it does happen. And we do have properties like that available even now.
Yeah, Jim, thank you for walking us through your personal story, your rag to riches story. What you've been able to do with your family and your father is absolutely admirable. I always say we're all should be doing this for a reason, and it should be some massive payoffs. You definitely have some magic payoffs. And now we're in the education realm, right? Where now we're trying to help other investors accomplish the same type of goals. And we're working hand in hand to package these deals together for our investors. For everyone on the call today, you're all assigned a district manager who's local here in Florida, boots on the ground. They'll be reaching out to you to schedule the first call, which is called the investor consultation. And then we're going to work with you to identify the top two properties that are most interested, that you're most interested in. We're then going to schedule what we call the deep dive. And the deep dives when we go in through the performa, into the addresses, and really work all the numbers with you to make sure we're able to answer all of the questions and address all the concerns that you may have. We're also going to be reaching out to you individually to try to see if we can send you a free copy of Jim's now best-selling book, The Passive Income Playbook. You guys all got a free book. All you have to do is reply back to that email with your address and we'll ship it to you. You should receive it within the month. And as always, reach out to us directly. We're always available at buildtorrent.com. We'll be able to answer all your questions and help you identify your next real estate investment property. Without further ado, thank you, Jim, for your time. Congrats on all your success. And I look forward to meeting all of you next time. Thank you and take care.